Hello and welcome back to the Hazzabhajan YouTube channel. It is Harry here, and today it is time for yet another oversaturation of the fact that I support Manchester City by virtue of the fact that I'm making yet another video about them. But this time I'm going to attempt to rank every single one of the club's record signings that have been made during the Premier League era, i.e. since 1992. Now, rather annoyingly, there is some confusion as to which players have actually broken the transfer record since that date, as every source I used had different lists, with some also accounting for inflation in the modern day, which gave me, as you would probably expect, even more headaches. After a bit of consideration, I've decided to combine all of the sources that I used, basically. So there are 15 signings that I'll be ranking today, although I won't include City's record transfer that was made prior to the Premier League era, that being Keith Curle's £2.5 million move in 1991, which stood until 1997. One important distinction to note is that the players will be ranked as signings for the club rather than as players, so factors such as how they performed, their impact, their cost, any sell-on value where applicable, their legacy, and other such factors will be taken into account. Another thing I must stress, of course, is that this is solely in my opinion, so I am not claiming that I am right, nor am I claiming I'm wrong, of course, but if you disagree with any of my picks, or rather my rankings as a whole, let me know which positions you would change, once you've seen the whole video, of course, down in the comments below. If you want me to do this with other teams within a similar time frame, then let me know as well down in the comments, because I'd be more than happy to try it out, and maybe I could roll this concept out into a series in the future. And as I said, if you're going to enjoy this video, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. And without any further ado, here is my attempt, and my attempt only, to rank every single one of Manchester City's record signings that have been made during the Premier League era from worst to best. 15th, Eliaquim Mangala. We start off this video with a bona fide City flop in Eliaquim Mangala, although admittedly there aren't actually that many in this list, which, considering they are all club record signings, is probably a good thing. Mangala wasn't officially a club record signing when he joined from Porto in 2014, but when payments to other authorities who owned his rights were taken into account, his fee totaled £42 million, which was £4 million more than the previous club record. After a convincing display on his debut against Chelsea, he then scored an own goal and gave away a penalty in his next game against Hull, and things didn't really recover from there. He looked shaky and error-prone, never really looking like the long-term centre-back partner to Vincent Kompany, and after another own goal in a 4-1 hammering by Liverpool in November 2015, the writing was on the wall. Loans to Valencia and Everton followed, and when he was released for nothing in 2019, he had made just 79 appearances in all competitions for the club, equivalent to more than £500,000 per game that he played, and he made absolutely zero appearances in the 2018-19 season, despite being on the club's books for the entire campaign. 14th, Joe. Now, I do actually feel quite sorry for Joe, since I think he was a victim of the club's takeover by Sheikh Mansour in 2008, the very summer in which he joined City for a fee of £19 million from CSKA in Moscow, and his arrival was subsequently overshadowed by the insane injection of money that the club received and the signings that would follow. Nonetheless, for a striker at that price at that time, which was a bigger fee than Arsenal ever paid for a player until 2013, you should probably expect more than 6 goals from 42 games, with just one of them coming in the league. He never nailed down a starting berth and became a forgotten man at the City of Manchester Stadium, being loaned out to Everton twice and Galatasaray before departing on a free to Internacional in 2011. He was an unfortunate signing, without any question, but he was still a player who never really lived up to the hype or ever really looked like doing so, and he rightfully takes his place near the bottom of the pile. 13th, Lee Bradbury. Manchester City's first record signing after 1992 was actually made while the club were languishing in the First Division, when nomadic striker Lee Bradbury moved to Main Road from Portsmouth to the tune of £3 million. To be honest, his time at City was a non-starter, as after scoring just 2 goals in his first 2 months, he suffered a back strain which kept him out of action for 4 months. Upon his return, the Blues were in a relegation battle, but he only scored 5 more goals throughout the rest of the campaign, which culminated in City being relegated to the Second Division for the first time in their history. 3 months into the new campaign, with Bradbury still struggling to impress in spite of being in a lower division, the club sold him to Crystal Palace for £1.5 million, half of what they'd originally paid for him. All in all, not exactly worth the money. 12th, John Macken. I was very reluctant to put John Macken so low down, given that he scored the winning goal in that famous 4-3 comeback victory over Spurs in the FA Cup, despite the citizens being 3-0 down and seeing Joey Barton sent off, careless of please, at half-time. But aside from that moment, his time at City was fraught by injuries, and as such, the one-capped Irish striker was never really able to sustain a consistent run of form. He scored just 12 goals in 59 games, and out of those 59 games, he lasted the full 90 minutes on just 12 occasions, which is not a statistic you want to see from your marquee £5 million signing, which you make while you're in the First Division in February 2002. Therefore, even though that goal against Spurs does prevent him from finishing in the bottom three and gives him an enduring club legacy, his injuries, lack of form and small selling value of just £1.1 million in 2005 mean he comes in 12th. 11th, Jack Grealish. I think you could almost disregard Jack Grealish's placement in this list in all honesty, as I do think it is still too early to make an accurate judgment on if he has been a success or a failure. That being said, he hasn't exactly been convincing so far, and when the club signed him for a British record fee of £100 million, which is the 6th highest fee ever paid in world football, I did think he was essentially an overpriced shiny coat of paint in a position in which City are already stacked. 3 goals and 3 assists in his debut season aren't exactly world-class stats, and he was left out of City's starting 11 frequently towards the back end of the season, but he is still only 26 and there is plenty of time left for him to turn things around. It may well be a case of taking a season to adjust to Guardiola's style of management and the system before really kicking on in 2022-23, and if he can turn his promise, which he did show on some occasions last season, into consistently great performances, he will rise higher in this list. But for now, the jury is still very much out. 10th, Robinho. As I've said before on this channel, if we were ranking transfers based on image and the effect it created, Robinho's £32 million move to City on 2008 deadline day, following Sheikh Mansour's purchase of the club, would be right at the top. The new owners wanted a big name signing to show that they meant business, and after the Brazilian's move to Chelsea fell through, the Sky Blues swooped in at the 11th hour and broke the British, never mind just the club's, transfer record to secure his services, although he did say in his first press conference that he was pleased to have joined Chelsea, which didn't exactly bode well. After a respectable 15 goals in his first campaign, including a free kick against Chelsea on his debut and a beautiful lob against Arsenal, his performances drastically tailed off as his ego and attitude problems got the better of him, leading to disciplinary issues and 0 goals in his second season. Ultimately, he failed to become the club's focal point that City's owners hoped he would become, perhaps because he joined too early on in the project and he wasn't exactly surrounded by a plethora of world-class players. And after a loan return to Santos, AC Milan signed him in 2010 for under half of what City paid for him. 9th, Paulo Wanchope. We are now moving into signings which I think were either good or great, and in spite of Costa Rican striker Paulo Wanchope performing very admirably for City, the quality ahead of him means he has to settle for 9th. A player who was loved by the City fans and who he loved back, Wanchope joined from West Ham for £3.65 million in 2000 as the big money move upon the club's return to the Premier League after a 4-season absence. Whilst he couldn't prevent them from slipping back into the First Division, his 9 league goals made him their top scorer that season, and in spite of an injury-plagued 2001-02 campaign, he still hit 12 goals in 15 games as the Sky Blues won promotion back to the Premier League at the first time of asking. However, another injury ruled him out for the whole of 2002-03, but he came back at the end of the following season to help City stave off relegation, scoring the goal against Newcastle, which ultimately ensured their survival. His departure to Malaga at a cost of just £550,000 does somewhat sour the move, hence his spot in 9th, but as I say, it's more a reflection of what's to come rather than the transfer itself. 8th, Nicolas Anelka. How on earth the Blues managed to sign a 23-year-old Nicolas Anelka in 2002 for £13 million when he'd already played for Arsenal, Liverpool, PSG and Real Madrid and won 27 caps for France? I genuinely do not know, especially since he had an overinflated ego and well-publicised attitude problems. Regardless, Kevin Keegan more than doubled the club's previous record, set on Macken earlier in the year, to sign Anelka, but the Frenchman admitted in his documentary that he thought he had to go for the move purely since nobody else wanted him, which is hardly a ringing endorsement. But Keegan played to Anelka's strengths, making him the star man and focal point of City's attack, and he didn't disappoint, bagging 45 goals in 103 games for the club, including 24 in the 2003-04 campaign alone. Famous goals included a winner against his former club Liverpool at Anfield, another in the final ever Manchester derby at Main Road in 2002, and a match-winning penalty against his would-be employers Chelsea in October 2004 in the only league game that the Blues lost all season. What prevents him from finishing slightly higher in this list, though, is that in February 2005, he left for Fenerbahce for just £7 million, resulting in a £6 million loss in spite of him being aged just 25 when he departed. So 8th is the best I can give. 7th, Riyad Mahrez. To be honest, you could very easily interchange the players who finished between 7th and 3rd in my opinion, and I wouldn't argue with you wherever you put them, as I think they were all smart, shrewd, and ultimately successful signings. Nevertheless, one of them has to come in 7th, and for me, it's Riyad Mahrez, the Algerian winger who joined in the summer of 2018 from Leicester for £58 million. Whilst his first season was definitely a mixed bag, including a missed penalty at Anfield which would have won City the game, he has shone ever since. Across 189 games, he has bagged 63 goals and notched up 46 assists, with his agility on the ball, first touch, and ability to cut inside on his favourite left foot and curl the ball home, Iron Robin style, making him a fan favourite amongst the City faithful. I really think his time at the Etihad has actually been underrated by many, especially given how pivotal he was last season and in their run to the Champions League final in 2020-21, scoring 3 of City's 4 goals against PSG in the semis. Even though he has no sell-on value whatsoever, this has been a successful transfer, but based on the competition which you'll see in the entrance to come, he ends up in 7th, almost by default. 6th, Aymeric Laporte. Again, it doesn't really feel right putting Aymeric Laporte in the middle third of this list, but ultimately, after toying back and forth for a while, I think it's where he deserves to come. After transferring from Athletic Bilbao in January 2018 for £57 million, he immediately looked like City's long-term answer to the need for a ball-playing centre-back, looking calm and elegant on the ball and solid when defending. And in 2018-19, he was named in the PFA Team of the Year, helping City to 98 points and the Premier League title. Although injury ruled him out for almost the entirety of the 2019-20 campaign, and John Stones' good form in 2020-21 meant he became third choice, he returned to his best last season and shone in another title-winning side. Aged 28, he has plenty of time on his side and should continue to be a mainstay in City's back line for the next half a decade at the very least. But in the here and now, I think that 6th is, harshly admittedly, about right. 5th, Raheem Sterling. Originally, I had Sterling in 3rd, but as his move to Chelsea looks ever more likely as of the time of this recording, with City looking like they might actually make a loss on him, he has to drop to 5th, despite how good he has been for the club. Admittedly, I do have some criticisms of Sterling as a footballer, but not as a person of course, including that he often makes the wrong move at the most crucial moment, which results in City losing the ball more often than they should, and is very frustrating to watch as a fan. However, for £49 million from Liverpool in 2015, he has ultimately proven to be worth every penny to the Sky Blues over the course of 7 years. His first 2 seasons were anything but spectacular, as he struggled to perform on a consistent basis, and many people were writing him off as an overpaid and troublesome waste of money. Mostly those working for UK tabloids, in fairness. Since 2017 though, Sterling has flourished, and between 2017 and 2020, he netted 79 goals for the club, which is truly remarkable whichever way you spin it. His best position in my opinion is up front, where he can use his attacking instinct and movement to pick up positions in the box and score plenty of goals, rather than on the wing, where his pace and dribbling can be frightening, but, as mentioned earlier, wildly inconsistent. His likely departure will be a blow to the club, especially since he will go to a title rival if he leaves, but I don't think I could justify putting him lower than 5th in spite of that. 4th, Rodri. Now we move into the realm of really inspired signings, and in 4th we have defensive midfielder Rodri, who was bought from Atletico Madrid in 2019 for around £62 million. An unconventional modern-day footballer who abhors tattoos and doesn't have social media, Rodri was heralded as City's successor to Fernandinho when he arrived, and he has lived up to that billing, and then some. One of the first names on Pep's team sheet nowadays, his passing range, tackling ability, strength, intelligence at reading the play, and cannon of a right foot from range have made him a perfect fit for the team. His last-ditch block against Liverpool in October 2021 arguably won City the league last season, and aged just 26, he could very easily give another decade of stellar service to the club if he chooses to stick around for that long. I know fourth still seems a little bit low, but in my opinion there are 3 record signings who have been better transfers than him, in spite of how highly I personally rate Rodri and how well he has undoubtedly done at City. Third, Ruben Dias. Even though Ruben Dias has only been at the club for 2 years, I actually think his signing is just about worthy enough to warrant a podium spot in this ranking, as his impact at the club so far has already been monumental. A plethora of centre-backs have been brought to the Etihad that have been touted as either Vincent Kompany's partner or successor, and most, if not virtually all of them, have failed to live up to those lofty expectations. With Dias though, it seems as though the Blues have finally made the perfect move in the centre-back department, albeit for a purported £64 million fee from Benfica in 2020. In his first campaign, he shored up the Blues' back line significantly, only conceding 21 goals in the 32 games that he played, and he picked up the FWA Player of the Year for his dominant, never-say-die defensive displays. Although he did experience a slight drop-off in standards last season, he still performed very well throughout, and he could very feasibly be City's first-choice centre-back for the next decade or so, provided he doesn't up sticks or get injured. So with all that taken into account, I think third's about right. Second, Kevin De Bruyne. The top 2 in my mind were never in any doubt, and taking the silver medal in my ranking is Kevin De Bruyne, who is one of the best players in the Premier League right now, if not the best. When De Bruyne signed for City for £55 million from Wolfsburg in 2015, he had just won the Bundesliga Player of the Year award with 16 goals and 27 assists in all competitions. But despite this, the feat was widely criticised, especially by the panellists on Gillette Soccer Saturday, who called it ludicrous and bonkers. How wrong they were. Almost immediately, the Belgian added an extra creative spark to the club's midfield alongside David Silva, and ever since Guardiola's arrival, De Bruyne has gone from strength to strength. He has topped the seasonal Premier League assist charts outright on 3 occasions, more than any other player since records began, as well as picking up the PFA Player of the Year award twice and the Premier League Player of the Year last season. And he was the club's best player in 2017-18 when they accrued a record total of 100 Premier League points. Aged 31, he shows no signs of slowing down and was the driving force behind City's title win last season, stepping up when it mattered most and assisting İlkay Gündoğan's title-winning goal. In any other list, the industrious, energetic, powerful and creative midfielder would have come top, but he has to settle for second, and this is why. First, Sergio Aguero. In spite of his continued brilliance for City, KDB still can't quite overhaul the legacy and imprint on the club that Sergio Aguero had, and indeed still has. And since the Argentine was also a record signing, he was a shoo-in for top spot. When City bought him for £38 million in 2011, it signalled a shifting tide, as the club had signed someone who was at the top of other major clubs' transfers targets list, most notably Barcelona and Real Madrid, and that they were now a serious proposition to be reckoned with. Over the course of 10 years in Manchester, Aguero scored a club record 260 goals in 390 games, beating City's goal-scoring record within 6.5 years of his arrival. Originally a pacey, agile and clinical striker when he arrived, Guardiola's appointment in 2016 looked to signal the beginning of the end for Aguero, but the Spaniard moulded him into a much more complete centre-forward, whilst keeping his goal-scoring output remarkably consistent. Then, of course, you have his goal at 93-20, arguably the most iconic moment in Premier League history, and plenty of other special moments, there are too many of them to mention, that have solidified his status as one of City's greatest players of all time. If it weren't for a series of niggling injuries, he would indisputably be the greatest player the club has ever had, and in all likelihood, he would have scored in excess of 350 goals for the club. So with that in mind, there was no doubt that the Argentine striker, who sadly retired in December 2021 owing to a heart problem, had to come first in this ranking. And that just about wraps up today's video, looking at how I would rank every single one of Manchester City's record signings that have been made during the Premier League era. And if you disagree with any of my choices, then please let me know. I'd love to hear how you would have ranked them down in the comments below, but please do it, respectively and constructively, not saying that I'm an absolute fraud for putting Raheem Sterling ahead of Rodri and sending pitchforks and torches down to my house. Please don't do that. This is, again, just my opinion, but I would love to hear yours down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, of course, please don't forget, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't done so already, ring the notification bell to get notified whenever I upload a video straight away, and check out the other video that's on screen about here or so to give that a watch, and maybe go and watch some more videos on my channel. Who knows? You might quite like what I have made so far. But thank you very much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you then.